Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another author interview on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I am your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, and today we have a first timer here on the show. My guest today is an author, actress, screenwriter, and award winning filmmaker. She's passionate about fantasy and sci fi books and film, as well as superhero comic books. Having fallen in love with writing in her childhood, she started out as a young author publishing poems and short stories. And her upcoming release is a young adult fantasy novel, Black Bug. And to tell us all about that and more, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, Anna Brenneisen. I hopefully I pronounced the last name correct.
That's right. Hi.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So before we dive into your upcoming young adult fantasy novel, is there anything else you'd like to share about your background with our viewers and listeners?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah.
All right, all right. So let's just start at the beginning. So, as a little teaser for our viewers and listeners, what can you tell us about your upcoming young adult fantasy novel, Black Bug?
So I consider it a mix of fantasy, sci-fi, and dystopian. And it is about a girl that gets superpowers in a very mysterious way. And then she's invited to participate in this uh, training of an agency, a biotech agency. It's a training for a security program there. And she accepts this offer, but when she gets there at this agency, some very suspicious things start to happen, and she's like, oh my gosh, I need to hide my powers in order to stay alive. And she also must get to the bottom of what exactly the people out there are up to, if they're plotting against people like her with powers and things like that. So she must figure that out, and in order to stay alive. And she just hopes she doesn't write in time before it is too late.
Nice, very nice. So now let's go more into your background as an author. So, according to your bio, you've always been fascinated with fantasy and sci-fi as well as superhero comics, and started publishing, short stories and poems. Were you always a creative kid growing up, or did that come about later in life?
As a kid, I was always like excited about writing essays in school and things like that, especially the ones that allowed us to be more creative and tell stories. So, but I didn't figure out that I like wanted to do that like as a life pursuit thing
Hmm.
until like 2012, 13 maybe. I just remember I think I was watching something on TV, like I think it was like Twilight, one of the Twilight films. At the time, Twilight was like a major thing. Like I wasn't really much of a fan, but I realized like so many people were like into this vampire thing, and I was like, wow, these stories, they just have so much influence on people. So I just realized how powerful storytelling actually was, and I was like, wow, maybe I could write a story. So at that moment, I just grabbed my iPad and I started crafting some stories and things like that.
Nice. So would you say that that was your aha moment when you realized this is something that I want to pursue throughout my life?
For sure, yeah. It all started there.
Awesome. So now let's actually go into the crafting of the story of Black Bug. So when you began writing out the initial draft for Black Bug, did you have any goals that you set up for yourself? And also, did you have any goals in mind for your prospective readers once this book releases?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to connect with people in a deeper level. I think I wanted it to be something that, like approach real world things with my book. I think that was something that I wanted to do, even though it's sci-fi and fantasy. I
Mm,
really wanted to like have this deep insights regarding life and things like that. Growing up, I had some tough time adjusting to like, people and things like that, social stuff. And I always felt a bit like left out, a bit of a misfit. And I wanted to write for these people, so I felt like maybe I can connect with people that felt the same way through this book.
Nice. Now, from that stage and then going into, of course, the editing phase, I would imagine you know a process and taking years and years. Now, for Black Book in particular, was this story developed over a long time? Like it began as something else in the beginning and it's here now, or was Black Bug the idea you had from the beginning and just continue to refine it?
So it's actually a mix. It was a very long process for me. It's like 10 years that I spent writing it. At first,
Mm.
I always knew it when I had the idea. I wanted it to be like a girl that looked like me, someone that I could relate to
Ah.
and had superpowers. That was always like a thing that I wanted, but then the details, like, they were just adding up, and some characters that used to exist don't exist in the final draft. So I think just many things that I had to shape in order to get a result that was like enjoyable for readers and for myself too.
Nice. Okay. Now, I don't know if you're already in this process right now with Black Book, but what has been like the reviews, like if you're doing like beta readers or ARC readers, and even if you told friends and family about, this upcoming book of yours, have the response been positive, negative, mixed? And if so, have the responses in a way validated your goals that you just mentioned beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like so very few people have read it since it hasn't been released yet, but everyone like had an overwhelmingly positive feedback for me, and that was just, very good to hear from them. My beta reader, Sarah, she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it. I love it." And she was like, "What is this book? I love it so much." So her feedback just, motivated me to keep on going. And then my editors also provided very positive feedback, and also they gave me suggestions to enhance it further. So it was really, really positive.
That's really good. That's really, really good to hear. And now I actually arrive at the first reflective question, which I'm really eager to hear your thoughts on, Anna. So, as I'm sure you definitely know, being an author is not a get rich quick scheme. It's not something that you can just make, a lot of money on the fly. It takes a lot of time, work, and effort. And, for like a story of like a passion project can take like years and years to develop. And then once it's finally there, you present it out into the world. And especially now in the digital age, when it comes to book promotions and having your books out there is that level of like anxiety if it's not going to be received well by your target audience or people you think are going to enjoy it. And then the big one, imposter syndrome, comes into play, where the voice tells us, oh, this isn't going to be good, no one's going to read that, and all the other negativity. So for you, Anna, have you ever had those moments of either anxiety or imposter syndrome? And if so, what has continued to discipline you to, bring this story to life and go forward with the publishing process?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone goes through that. I think it's like you can really run from it. But I just have so much passion in my heart for storytelling. So I feel like, regardless of the results, that's just something that I really had to do for myself. And hopefully it will reach other people, and that's the purpose of the whole thing. But regardless of the results and everything, I just really had to do it for myself first.
Definitely. I 100%, getting our work out there. Even if I had one guest say this a while ago on the show, even if, very few people read it or even one person reads it, the fact we have a book out there, that's a huge achievement. That is a huge accomplishment
Yeah.
because no one can, make the commitment to write a book, because it is a commitment. You are giving hours and hours, time, if not years, to crafting this incredible work of fiction to life. And it's, as I said, it's a passion project, and it really shows, who you are in the world. And even if one person reads it, that's more than enough, which actually will lead into the business side of being an author. Before we get into the business side, I did have a few questions, which I forgot to send you with the main questions. But this is more on your background as an actress, screenwriter, and filmmaker. So I was wondering if you can tell our viewers about how you got into that industry and what sort of drives you to create the stories you want to show.
So I feel like storytelling kind of like revolves around many things. So it's like writing is screenplays and books are similar in that sense, you know. So I
Hmm.
think one led to the other. I always loved films. I think actually films inspire me so much to write things and, you know, give me ideas and things like that. So I think I just loved films and things like that and writing and reading. So I just really wanted to explore different areas of storytelling.
Nice. And what sort of like films do you explore? Is it mainly the ones that you like to write in, fantasy, sci-fi, or do you like to broaden your genre when it comes to screenwriting and filmmaking?
Yeah, I think it really depends. At the moment, I've only like made short films, and
Okay.
I graduated recently, so usually was like school assignments that we have to do, and sometimes it wasn't my screenplay. Sometimes I would just participate as like a crew member doing other things like script supervising, something that I did a lot for other films. When it comes to my films, I think I like to explore different genres too. I don't just stay attached to fantasy, especially because fantasy films are actually very costly to make.
Yes.
Like if you want to make like something, I don't know, like Marvel films, you know, that kind of style of films, it's amazing, but it's very costly.
Yes, that is true. That is very, very true. And I actually wanted to hear your thoughts on this question because I'm really curious because a few of my guests I've had on the show, they've all started off as screenwriters and have transitioned into, the author industry, the publishing industry. And, listening to their stories and from all of them, they've said that for screenwriters, when it comes to crafting, visual imagery in storytelling, it's a little bit easier and also gives a cinematic approach to, the stories that they share. Shout out to Brian Fitzpatrick, who is another screenwriter and author who wrote the book Metcraft, who gave me this inspiration. So I would like to hear your thoughts on this. And do you think that for screenwriters who write novels, that there is a little bit of an edge? Not to say that one is better than the other, but for screenwriters, because they write for movies and they're very, very descriptive, transitioning that mindset to book form strictly comes a little easier.
Yeah, I think one thing helps the other. Like, you know, either if you're like a screenwriter transitioning to like being a novelist or something like that, or if you write novels and then you want to like work with screenplays, I think you're gonna have it easier than like one that just works one thing, you know. But I think it's just really, really helpful to have like both skills. I feel like screenwriting for me is a little bit easier because
Mm,
sometimes I don't like to be so like uh so poetic. Let's say with some scenes, I just like to keep it straightforward. So screenplays are very straightforward, you know. There isn't much
right.
space to be like poetic about it. I like being poetic too, but you know, sometimes it's just easier to just be straightforward. So I think screenplays are like easier because of that sometimes.
Okay. And that's a little fun question. Has there ever been a screenplay that you've written about that you feel, if you wanted to, could be adapted into its own book?
I think at the moment, not really. I feel like I have a short story that I could definitely adapt for a film. Like the other
Okay.
have a short story that I really wanted to make like maybe like I don't know if like a feature film. I think it's more like a short film for that. It's
Ah,
like
okay. Nice. So that's actually really, really cool. And now, from this little transition, we're now going to go into the business side of being an author, which I'm very eager to hear your thoughts on, Anna. So, as we talked about before, Black Bug is still in the editing process before it releases. But I am curious, when you began crafting this story, did you have an idea of what a route for publishing that you want to go with? Do you want to go the indie, traditional, or hybrid?
At first, I really wanted to go traditional. I didn't really understand very much like about this kind of things like publishing because I was very young. But I felt like it was right to go the traditional way. But then I got like a rejection from it.
Mm.
But it was a very early draft that I had. And again, I was very young. I didn't know what I was doing exactly. I was just like, I'm just gonna send to this publisher that accepts, manuscripts and things. And I was like, okay, it didn't work out. Should I try? Like, of course, I was gonna improve the manuscript after that rejection. I was like, okay, that's a sign that I have to make adjustments, and that's perfectly fine. But then I was wondering if I should go indie or traditional later on, and I decided to go indie because I felt like it was right for me at this time.
Definitely, and being an indie author, just like with traditional publishing, it has its own, benefits, but also a lot of things that come with it. With traditional, yes, you do get the wide audience, and you do have to get all this stuff. But for traditional publishing, it is like a job. You do have to make like a commitment, saying, okay, in this year or so, I'm going to have the next book, or I got to make sure I meet this deadline. That's the same thing with also indie if you make your own deadlines. But for independent publishing, it's all on you. Marketing, publicity, editing, proofreading, finding a cover artist. That's all on you. And that takes a lot of time and money. So it's a lot of, business savvy, handling money properly, and all of that, which I've talked about numerous times on the show. And then from this mindset, we go into now understanding, okay, who is the audience? Now, for you, Anna, did you have a good idea of who your audience was when you began drafting Black Book?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of wanted to write the book that I wish I had when I was going through like this very dark period of my life when I was younger. I struggled with like social stuff, and I just felt very rejected. And then I think I kind of developed some type of depression, and
Mm.
I was in a very dark moment. And I was like, after I got out of this darkness, I was just like, man, I wish I could write a book for my older self and for my younger self. And I was like, maybe someone could use this story, that is going through the same stuff that I went through, and it could be a light in the dark for them. So at first, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write for people that were struggling with anything at all, and just, let them know that they are not alone, that they are actually, that there are others that go through the same struggles that they go through.
Definitely. I 100% agree. And, that mindset actually reminds me of another author that I had on a show who very much had the same thing that, she was in the realm of fantasy and sci-fi, but she also wanted to bring about, real world topics that are ingrained in the story, that it's not so heavy handed, but it's something that the reader can definitely pick up and really make a connection to, which I think is really good. And also, as an add on to that question, in your opinion, how important is it for an author to reconsider the audience? And bonus question, when should an author consider the audience in the writing process? And I bring this up because, when we write our stories, we are the target audience initially because we know the stories better than anyone else. But when we go to the process of publishing it, we really have to think of, okay, I know I'm going to love this story, but what about the everyone else? Who am I marketing this book to?
Yeah, I think when you're like first drafting, you kind of have to like forget everyone else. You just have to let it out, like the ideas that you have. First drafts are usually very messy because of that. You just have a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
ideas and start throwing them, and it's just part of the process. I think it's so important to just let your thoughts out, and then as you move further with the editing and things like that, then you have to really consider, will my audience understand what I'm saying? Will they relate to that, and not just what makes sense to you personally?
That's actually really true. And I like what you said that, the first draft is you just getting the story out. Don't really consider the audience at that point for the first draft. Just get your story out. And then, once you're fine tuning it, then really hammer home on who your audience is. And I really, really like that. So thank you for sharing that.
No
And
problem.
another thing I did want to have your thoughts on is actually a question, or rather a statement that a previous guest of mine said a few months ago. Now, initially, this question was talking about, who are your inspirations when it comes to your writing process, characters, world building, and stuff like that. But um, the guest who I had on the show kind of reworded that question, or rather changed it a little bit, where he did mention who his inspirations were, but ultimately he wasn't trying to be like them. He wasn't trying to imitate them, and that led to a beautiful topic and discussion of identity as an indie author, who we are in showing our work. Because I'm sure you've definitely seen and books that have had this tagline, the next so and so. And from a reader's perspective, that's enticing because it gets them to pick up the book. But for the author, that may not be helpful to them because that pigeonholes them into either a particular category or particular style of writing. And going back to the role models, we're not trying to imitate or replicate them, but we want to show who we are as individuals in our writing, because ultimately we want our readers to pick up our books and know, okay, this is how this author writes, so now I know what to expect when he comes out with his second book. So ultimately, Anna, I know this was a very long question, but what are your thoughts on this balance of, yes, you do want to show who were the authors who inspired you and in a way may have helped you hone your voice as an author, but at the end of the day, you're showing your individuality and your identity as an author.
Yeah, I think it's just important for you to have your own personality, in life and also
Mm-hmm.
writing, because then there's just no point if you're just gonna do the same thing as someone else is doing. We already have that someone else. So why would I read someone who's just trying to imitate that other person? So I feel like you just gotta be yourself in your writing. And of course we have our inspirations and our references, but we have to be ourselves.
Definitely. And as a bonus question to this one, would you like to share the authors or even comic books that have helped you hone your voice as an author with Black Book?
Oh, I think there's just so many all through. Wow, it's just, I think for me, my biggest role model, in life, writing and things like that, would be C.S. Lewis. I'm crazy about
Hmm.
his style. I just really love that. But I feel like for Black Book, maybe the inspiration a little bit would be authors like Marie Lu, Veronica Roth, and Suzanne Collins, because of the fantasy books.
Nice. You're probably I don't want to say, maybe like the seventh author that's mentioned Suzanne Collins on the show. Now I have to go and check out her books because everyone keeps mentioning Susan Collins, and I have no idea who that person is. But now I know I have to check this person out because if all my guests keep saying this name, I gotta go check this person out.
Yeah, she wrote The Hunger Games. So
I knew that name sounded familiar. I read the book back in like middle school, but I never read any of the others. I was like, why does that name sound so familiar? Thank you for clarifying that.
no problem.
Awesome. And actually, kind of on this topic of, identity and audience and readership, I now think it's also important to talk about just that, the readership, because, when we're marketing for our books, we really have to consider, okay, the age group that this book falls into. Yes, we can market to the genre or the audience, but if we're writing a book for a particular age group in the audience, that's a lot of fine tuning in terms of the language, the themes, some descriptions throughout the book. because I'm sure you may have read, Anna, or may have heard of some books that may have been geared towards, in this case, young adult, but upon reading them, they're like, this need another read through because this is a little bit too graphic for young adult, too much spice. So for you, Anna, I know your book is categorized as young adult, but did you initially start off as young adult, or did you start off as regular adult fiction, but then changed it to young adult?
No, it was always young adult. Yeah.
All right. Now, kind of add a tag onto this, because I've always wanted to you learn more about, authors who write young adult novels. What do you think are the challenges and or difficulties of writing, young adult novels? Because I've had a few guests on the show who said there is a little bit of a challenge when it comes, the language, how descriptive you want to go, how detailed you want to go, as well as if you're writing on themes that target real life, how heavy-handed do you want to be with those themes? So, in your opinion and experience, what have been the challenges and difficulties of being a young adult author?
To be honest, there wasn't much of a challenge in that sense
Mm.
because I was like a teen writing it, so it was just like writing for like my age. So it didn't like come out to me as like a challenge. It just natural. That
Okay. All right, that actually makes sense. So because you're already in that age group at the time when writing Black Bug, you already know, okay, this is what people my age or kids my age are going to understand, as opposed to if you were an adult writing young adult fiction. There, would you say there would be a little bit of a difficulty if you were an adult writing young adult fiction?
Yeah, I think sometimes with like the language, maybe like
Mm,
what is like you know more understandable for the kids and things like that, probably.
definitely. And also, another thing I want to get your insight on, because I definitely think it is a very important question to talk about in this portion of the interview, is, writing for trends. Now, I haven't brought up this question a lot because I usually tie it with another question, but, I feel, the topic of writing for trends doesn't get shared enough. And what I mean by that, viewers and listeners, is, let's say you go to Barnes and Noble and you see that book stand where it has all the hot new books and it's like newest books, and they're usually following a particular trend that's popular in the industry. It's almost just like when it comes to filmmaking and movies. If there's a popular genre or theme in filmmaking that one movie does so well, there's going to be a bunch of copies, a bunch of knockoffs that want to cash in on that. And some books, hit the hammer on the head very well. Others struggle just to reach the gravy train and the writing suffers. So, Anna, I was wondering if you can talk to us about, your thoughts on, this discussion of writing for trends and whether it is detrimental to an author's growth on their journey.
Yeah, I think you have to write the story that is calling to you. So I don't think it works very well. Not in a very natural way for you to just write something because it's trending. I feel like it doesn't make sense. I feel like it just kills the passion a little bit because
Mm,
when you have this story that you're really passionate about, you just have to do it. So when you're just writing for like to meet some trend, I don't feel like there is just enough passion even to like carry it out to the end, to even finish writing it. Maybe I don't know if you are gonna disagree.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, 100% agree. And you actually touch on a major question that we're now going to lead into. And it's probably one of my personal favorite questions to ask my guests. So, for this question, I'm going to lay down some context for this just so it helps. So, I've been doing this now for 2 years, interviewing a wide range of authors. Thank you. Who are very on their different journeys thus far, from traditional, indie, just starting out, just drafting this story. I've met a wide range of incredible people who write either in the same genre that I love, which is fantasy or historical fiction, or sometimes even genres that I do not typically read, but I am fascinated by. And from these experiences and interactions, I've come to learn that there is what I call the twofold path for authors, which is to be an author and to be known as an author. And for me, to be an author is an individual dedicated to the art of storytelling and, crafting new worlds, not solely motivated by capital, but it's nice to receive money now and then because, as authors, we all want a little paycheck to help, the process going. And the second one, to be known as an author, is an individual dedicated to the art of marketing, publicity, going on interviews, podcasts, showcasing their work, pumping it up on social media, getting people interested in what they have in stores. Now, each path has its own trials and hurdles, but I definitely feel, and a lot of my guests do agree, that for starting, or I should say, for first time authors and writers who are writing their very first story, the second path is the most enticing, but it leads to the problem of unrealistic goals and expectations. And ultimately, it comes down to this discussion, which is a hard pill to swallow, but it is necessary, and that is this. For first time authors, there is no guarantee that your debut novel is going to guarantee the start of your legacy just like that. Yes, there are exceptions to the rule. There are exceptions to that. I have met a few authors whose first book launched them to that status, which that is an incredible feat. Not a lot of people can do it. But generally speaking, you have this roller coaster of highs and lows. And ultimately, just as you were talking about, Anna, if you're writing for trends or trying to join, what's happening, what's popping in the publishing world, your writing is going to suffer and the passion is going to die with you because it's no longer fun. You're just writing to write to hopefully get some royalties from this book. So ultimately, that is the question. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this, that, there is no guarantee in this industry that your debut book is going to be the start of your legacy. But, and I cannot stress this enough, but it should not deter a young writer from not pursuing writing anymore if writing stories, crafting new worlds is truly what they're passionate about.
Yeah. Well, I believe if you're just writing for money or to get some type of recognition, you shouldn't be writing at all. Like,
Okay.
because it's like so difficult already to just write something. And like, if you're doing just for like the wrong reason, I don't even know if you're like gonna be motivated enough to, finish writing, to be honest with you. I think when you write thinking like you want to promote something for someone else, like you really want to meet a need of your reader, that creates passion and that will drive you to, it's really hard. Yeah, I mean, it took me 10 years to write this book, so I don't even think I would have finished that if I didn't think of like my audience, or like, and again, it's not a guarantee when you write something that you're going to have a bunch of people lining up to read your book, but you just have that hope in your heart that at least one person is going to read it, and that's the one person that needs the book. So I think you have to write for this one person that you have in mind and just hope, yeah, that this person is going to read your book. But it's never a guarantee that you're going to have a bunch of people wanting to read it.
You know what? That's 100% true. And also to add on to that, it may be your seventh, 15th, or 20th book that really gets the attention of the masses when that happens. I actually had a guest a year ago, Natalie Wright, who wrote Season of the Dragon. That was her seventh book. When I first met her, I thought that was her first book. But she gave me this whole story that she had wrote 6 books previously, did not get, the feedback that she wanted. But when she wrote her 7th book, that was when, everything just skyrocketed for her. And that's what she gave me, a great piece of advice, is that when that book that you write touches the masses, whether it's, as I said, 7th or your 20th book, when that happens, you can tell those readers, hey, if you like this book, check out 19 all the way down to 1. And boom, you got a new set of readers. Let's say it could be a mix of loyal readers who have been with you from the beginning and possibly even new readers who are just discovering your work right now. Because at the end of the day, grit transforms into talent. And that's the truth for all authors, because we only get better as time goes on. And also, grit can also be applied to not just the writing process, but also the marketing and network process. As indie authors, as I mentioned before, it's not easy. Sometimes we need help from other authors who have been in the job or in the field a little bit longer than us. So, Anna, are there any authors you would like to give a shout out to who have helped you understand the indie industry a little bit better from when you started off?
To be honest with you, like my writing journey was like really lonely. Like I would not even
Ah,
tell people like that I was writing like anything. And I didn't even know like many people, let alone authors. So it was kind of like my thing. And I feel like right now I'm starting to connect with like more people, like more authors on Instagram that have reached out to me or that I've reached out to them. And I just am excited to see those relationships developing like right now at the moment. But like my journey started kind of like I didn't know anyone in the industry or anything like that.
that's actually fair. I was actually very much the same way. When I started writing my first book, I had no idea of who to, reach out to. I just wrote and got my first 2 books published. But now with my third book published out now, which has been out for I think 2 months now, I've had the opportunity to reach out, meet new authors, and especially on Instagram, which is the hub of indie authors, as well as a little sprinkle of hybrid and traditional authors, listening to them, learning from them. It's such an incredible feeling because I definitely think you same goal. I know a lot of people will think that, oh, there's like a hierarchy between the two, traditionals on top, indies in the middle, hybrid, or whatever. And there may be some sprinkling of truth to that. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to help one another. We're all in the same boat. Because as I said previously at the beginning of this interview, writing a book is not a get rich quick scheme. It's not easy. It takes years of hard work and dedication, and interacting with new people, fellow authors. That's part of the journey because we learn from them. We find out, okay, how do I publish my book on this platform, or what do I do to get readers on this platform? All that all takes time. And we now arrive at the final question of this amazing interview, Anna. And here is the last question. So, with everything you have learned thus far as an author, and also as a screenwriter, actress, and filmmaker, what is your word of wisdom to fellow authors and fellow filmmakers who want to get a head start in their respective industries?
Oh, I feel like it's the type of situation, like the wand chooses the wizard, something like that, because I feel like it's the story that chooses you in a certain way. It's gonna be your choice to write it or not. But I feel like you have to write the story that is calling to you, because then you're just going to have so much passion, and that's going to be a fuel to make sure you keep on going and finish the process. Because for me, writing this book was really hard at first. I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to write a novel, like what the hell am I doing? But I just have this fire inside my heart that I was like, man, I really need to tell the story. And it's this mix of despair and urgency, and that's a really good sign, because I feel like if you have that, then that means you have something very meaningful to share with people. And even when you want to throw in the towel and be like, oh, I don't want to write anymore, because there are those moments and they always happen. If you have a feeling in your heart, I'm sure you're going to go through the end with it. And that's what's important. I feel like with filmmaking, it's the same thing. Filmmaking is really hard too. I mean, it's a lot about like networking and getting to know other people. If you're starting as a filmmaker, like in this screenwriting, area, that's like the same thing that I just said. I feel like you have to write a story that you're really passionate about.
You know what? That is 100% true. And I absolutely love your answer to this question. I absolutely love it because you know what? Everything you said is 100% true. And with that, my viewers and listeners, this concludes another author interview here on the channel. I want to give a huge thank you to Anna for coming on the show and telling us all about her journey as an author, as well as her journey as a filmmaker and screenwriter. Now, Anna, where can people find and engage with you on social media? And where can people pre-order your book, Black Bug, if it's available for pre-order?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And you can find my book on Amazon and Kobo. It's available for pre-order and will be released on the 22nd of this very month. And you can connect with me on social media. It will be a pleasure to talk to you and connect with you on Instagram at Anna Brenneisen.
I will link all that down below in the description of this video. Thank you all so very much for joining me for, again, as I said, another amazing author interview. I want to give a huge thank you to Anna, and we wish her the very best on her journey as an author, as well as a screenwriter, actress, and filmmaker. We cannot wait to see what she has in store for us down the road. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below what was your favorite part of the interview. And as always, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out, wishing you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or wherever you are in the world.